I'd like to invite our first speaker of the day, Agather Atuhaire. Agather is a Ugandan lawyer, journalist, and human rights activist, championing social justice and accountability through digital activism. Her investigations have exposed high-profile public corruption scandals and human rights violations, notable amongst them being the Ugandan Parliament's overspending of public funds, the continued incarceration of the supporters of the opposition party, amongst others. As a team leader at Agather Center for Research, she has, together with her colleagues, run various social media campaigns dubbed exhibitions, which have sparked national conversations and policy changes in many aspects. She's won a slew of awards. She is the 2023 laureate of the EU Human Rights Defenders Award, a 2024 laureate of the International Women of Courage Award, and was recognized as one of the 100 emerging leaders shaping the future in the 2024 Times 100 Next list. All right, Atuhaire, floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. And yes, my name is Agather Atuhaire, and being a trained journalist and trained lawyer makes me a stickler for facts, a stickler for the truth, for verification and all that. I find myself in a space where I am the only one that cares about that. Because on social media, where we do most of our work as Agather, no one else cares about facts. Everyone has a right and freedom and space to write whatever they want to write. And because of that, there has been a lot of misinformation, and we came into that space, in that sea of misinformation and disinformation, we came in to be the voice of reason. But it's not easy because we've been victims of misinformation and disinformation ourselves. But yeah, so let's go through the slides, please. So yeah, at Agather Center for Research, we started Agather because we want to do evidence-based activism. So we do both journalism and activism. And journalism and activism feed into each other in a way that where we investigate and then use X to do advocacy, to disseminate this information, but also to rally Ugandans to behind the causes that we have pursued as by now. But also activism feeds into journalism in the sense that we crowdsource information. So where we get information from the public, we follow it up now with more and deeper investigations. Our work is also highly driven by research, and mostly it is to deal with the subject of this discussion, misinformation and disinformation. We have a website to deal with this, and I'll share, I think before we close, I'll share a link where we were thinking that we might not be able to fact check what each person says or challenge it, but we might give the public the tools they need to be able to tell whether this is misinformation or disinformation. Here are some of the things that drive misinformation and disinformation in Uganda, and I'm glad that in the video of Maureen that we saw, she tried to show us the difference. So yeah, misinformation sometimes is is innocent. That someone, because they have a phone and internet, they have had something they want to write about it, or this whole the clickbaits you've heard about them, but also the need to break the story fast, so that people no longer give themselves time to verify information, because they worry that by the time they go through verification, the other people will have beaten them to it. Because now the competition is not just against journalists, the competition is against everyone. In fact, recently I was thinking I saw there was a story about Ugandan MPs being given 100 million as a bribe, like the executive always does. And the people that were sharing this information were some opposition MPs. And I was thinking, as journalists, we will not have sources anymore because now everyone wants to break a story. Everyone has the platform to break a story. So misinformation is common mostly because of that. Disinformation, on the other hand, is that someone is deliberately peddling wrong information, propaganda, and like I said, still in this country and in other countries, there are so many motivations for that. The motives are that one, you have a government that wants to peddle a different narrative because before social media became this popular, the government had the monopoly of information most of the time, knew what they want to hide. So now that we have exposed them, they are spreading the disinformation of how activists like myself are agents of imperialists, are agents of homosexuals, that they might know it is not true. Because the first one of being agents of imperialists is that it defeats the argument. Really doesn't make sense for a government that depends more than 50% on foreign funding. So if you're saying that we are funded to criticize you, why are you, by foreign agents, why are you being funded? They know that it's not illegal for NGOs to be funded by both the local and foreign foreign funders. And in Uganda's case, it's really majorly foreign funders. But they want to use that to to have the unsuspecting population think that that's really something, that there's something wrong with that. The president even wrote a letter there, was it yesterday, but one about 2 days ago, saying that as a response to the question about money he's given to the members of parliament, saying that he doesn't find that corrupt. What he finds not only corrupt but also treacherous is people that get money from foreign funders. But you get money from foreign funders yourself. And I wrote in response and said that would make you the biggest corrupt traitor if that's what it means to be funded by foreign agents. So disinformation is basically that people know the truth, but they want to character assassinate. They want to erode your credibility in the eyes of the public. So they do that. And in here, the people that suffer the biggest wrath of that are journalists and activists, political opponents, critics of government, and that. So social media has been the biggest vehicle for that. In the run-up to the last election of 2021, the government of Uganda had bot accounts that were spreading misinformation, disinformation against the opposition party, the National Unity Platform. In fact, some of those accounts were closed by Facebook. So yeah, you find that they know they are not that popular on social media. By they, I mean the politicians, because social media now has Ugandans that are unhappy with the status quo, that are dissatisfied, that feel that corruption has been endemic, that feel that violations of rights have gone to new levels. And because of that, they have the money to buy people, just a few people, but who will open so many accounts to do those things. So those bot accounts are always coming in to attack whoever has any questions against the government. So yeah, we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so well, it turns out that we've done about 10 campaigns so far, the ones we call exhibitions. We started with the portable exhibition, which was to shine a light on the state of roads in Kampala. And when we were doing that, many other sectors were happy that we were doing that because the roads affect everyone, even some people in government, even parliament commented on that exhibition. We went to the health sector exhibition, also showing the state of hospitals. And even then, some institutions of government were on our side. We moved to the security exhibition, and that's where we saw a lot of backlash because, I mean, the government was not happy that we're talking about brutality by the security forces. And, you know, that's when we started getting threats. We moved to the NGO exhibition to also shed a light on the corruption abuse in the NGO sector. The thinking behind that was that you can't claim to be holding the government accountable, calling it out on the things that you also engaged in. So we wanted to criticize ourselves as well, as it were. And the NGO sector, the NGO exhibition was very interesting because we were attacked the most during that exhibition. It turned out that the NGOs, that question that criticized did not like to be criticized. And during that time, because as the one leading it, each is led by a different person. So I've led on the team here, I've led the NGO exhibition and the parliament exhibition. So as the one leading the NGO exhibition, and being a woman, maybe that's the point I should have started with. Being a woman in this space, you deal with worse, worse than our male counterparts in the space. It's easier to target a woman, it's easier to target their sexuality, and so they started by talking about how I sleep around with so many men, how I have 4 children from 4 different men. I think they were about to say I have 4 children from 10 men, and all those, first of all, are false. Secondly, are immaterial. So I never even went to defend myself. I just said, so what's the problem? If you brought here young children, young boys that you're saying I'm dividing, you could probably have a point. But now, me sleeping around with many men does not violate any law or anyone's rights. And what we are calling out here is a violation of the law, a violation of rights, criminality, like utter criminality. So yeah, you face that from civil society, you face that from government institutions and officials that you're criticizing or exposing, and that mine has been just to develop a thick skin and continue moving despite of all that. So yeah, I think some of these things I already said them. We could go to the next slide, please. So yeah, what we do here at Agora is, like I said, we have a website about this information with the toolkit. We are still building it, but we'll have games and the most appealing ways that that people can use to combat or to sort of forestall this information. And that the reason we look at appealing ways in all our work, including the infographics we do and the cartoons, is because we deal with the demographics of Uganda are that around about 75% of the population of Uganda are people that are below 35 years of age. Now, these people are not readers. I don't know if that's the case in other places, but it might be. They are not readers. Their attention span is very low, and I know it firsthand because when I was working in mainstream media, we would write articles of over 1,000 words, 2,000 words, and no one read them. People didn't read them. But now when we use Twitter, where you put just I think 280 characters that was formerly allowed, people will have the patience to read that. So we came and said, since we are dealing with a population, an audience that doesn't read much, we need to look for ways of more entertaining ways of doing that. But also, yeah, sarcasm and laughter are important when you are in a country where people deal with so much. You can, reach many by appealing to them or giving them information in a way that is lighter than their problems. And that's what happened with the pothole exhibition. It was fun. It was fun for people to take photos, because we were asking people to take photos of potholes around them and share them, so that at the end of the day we see which pothole is the biggest. So it was like, in a funny way, you are talking about the issues that are affecting people. We have a cartoonist on the team, who's also a professor at Makerere University, called Spire Centaur, and does these hilarious cartoons that people laugh at, but yeah, with the message that everyone sees. He also writes satirical letters sometimes to the people that head the institutions that we are challenging, or where we are exposing information. We also have a graphics designer that is very good at putting figures in a way that is, appealing, and figures or quoting the law. Corruption was not making sense to Ugandans. They didn't know what is at stake. They didn't know the implications. So when we write about corruption in parliament, for example, we would also juxtapose it with what that money would have done for Ugandans. In this case, there was information that I got, and we had all these receipts that the speaker and deputy speaker had bought themselves generators, and they had bought generators that could power an entire hospital for their homes, like individual homes. So you put it like this, in a way that there was a generator bought for a hospital by not ourselves, but the foreign funders that they criticize. But yet we have money to buy a generator of that capacity for one home. Yeah, so yeah, in this way people understand the issue. If we could just finish up all of them, and then I conclude. Yeah, this is one of the cartoons. I tell people this is my favorite cartoon. When the parliament of Uganda was passing a law against homosexuality, and they saw it as our biggest priority. And so every time you ask them about corruption, they would go to their famous narrative of, we know you are funded by homosexuals. And so Spire came up with this cartoon that I found very interesting, that when we ask you about our funds as taxpayers, you just resort to calling us agents of homosexuals. So yeah, and one of the letters were there. So we are trying to give actual proper information in so many different ways, but we are also trying to deal with the effects of disinformation and misinformation in different ways. Some people on my team resort to responding to disinformation against us. I choose to just ignore, because I don't think there is. Sometimes I ignore, depending on who has written, or sometimes I respond. If you call me an agent of imperialists or foreign funders, I remind you that if you are, for example, President Museveni, I remind you that you have led a government for 40 years, which depends about 60% on the same imperialists. Yeah, but also to try and tell Ugandans that this is not the point, this is diversionary and all that. On the personal side, it's, like I said, to develop a thick skin and try to make that, keep your eyes on the ball, as it were, and try to not be bothered or affected by that, but also seek psychosocial support, have ways of protecting your mental health. I have gone to therapy. I also take some breaks once in a while to, cool off and whatever, and get back to the work. So yeah, we could talk about that later, but I think to conclude, that's it.
Thank you so much, Agatha. I really appreciated how You shared how your response to being told that, that you have 4 children with 10 men was, so I really appreciate that. But also thank you for reminding us how this is affecting us as individuals, as human beings, all of us at the end of the day, right? At the receiving end of this, what the toll it takes on us. Thank you for just bringing it back to that, that reminder. It's not a problem out there in the cloud. But yes, thank you so much. And we will be hearing more from you during the Q&A.